All right, y'all, what's going on? Welcome to the Monday Night Live. Put a one in the chat if y'all can hear me clearly. Before we get started with today's message, how's everybody doing, by the way? Put a W in the chat if you're feeling good, if things are going your way, and put an L in the chat if not so much. We talk about it. And of course, one's in the chat if you hear me clearly, if my sound is good. There we go, y'all. Everybody, big shout out to y'all tuning in. Denise, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Yes, ma'am. Anishka White, what's going on? Good to see you in here. When am I coming back to New York? Would love to be at your meetup. Yeah, I'll be back in New York actually. I'm planning to come back to New York actually pretty soon. I haven't set out a date yet, but there's some things though that I want to do back in New York. You know, of course, I got to reconnect with friends and family and whatnot. But yeah, when I do return, definitely I'm going to fill y'all in on the details of what I'll be doing while I'm in New York and new things that I'll be doing. Mark, what's going on, brother? Good evening. Absolutely. Mama Do in the chat. What's going on? Good to see you in here as always. So one thing I want to get into doing more is focusing more on mindset, mental and emotional well-being, spiritual health, and all that kind of stuff. Normally in my discourse, I try to stick to things that I have hard, tangible data and evidence for, and it's often a science-based conversation, but that discourse has its limitations, right? And we aren't really entirely driven by data and spreadsheets and percentages and hard numbers, right? This is useful information, but it's not really information that we connect with. As human beings, we're actually a lot more simple and intuitive in a way, right? And tonight's conversation is going to be more focused around your ability to live and engage consistently in rational behavior, right? And to dial into a little bit more about what rational behavior is. Rational behavior makes sense. There are certain assumptions that are baked into rational behavior that when you're exhibiting rational behavior, everyone knows it, including you. Rational behavior feels right. Rational behavior feels synchronized within you and outside of you. We're seeing some W's in the chat here. There we go. Yeah, we're rational, not logical. This is true, right? Because we don't really think consciously in terms of math. Interestingly enough, math governs the body, but in a subconscious way, right? Math is more of like the numbers under the hood, but that's not how we interpret it in real time, right? So a great example of this is every color that is perceptible to your eye has like a serial number. It has some type of mathematical frequency that you can dial into. Radio stations operate the same way, right? There's a certain wavelength that you can dial into and pick up a certain message, right? But you have to be cued into that frequency. You have to be cued into that vibration. That is a scientific thing. It's very, it's proven. If you do not tap into that frequency, you can't see those colors. You can't hear that message. You can't see that particular image, right? So everything is actually encoded in terms of numbers. But on the front end, the way that we interpret it has nothing really to do with math, right? It's more of a deeper, richer, vivid visualization. It's an experience, right? Miss D, what's going on? Good to see you in here. So rational behavior, and I'm choosing this, right? And you said it too, right? We're rational, not logical, right? Because logic is a bit of a different thing. And I chose the word rational for a reason, right? In the same way where I talk about ethics and morals in a different way, right? They're not really the same thing. Here's a rational thought. 2025 isn't really a real number. The actual year is not 2025. Right? We keep saying that, and we get conditioned to think that. But the thing is that as a species and as a planet, the planet we live on is not 2025 years old. And as a species, humanity is not 2025 years old, right? Like, history didn't start 2025 years ago. We keep saying this. It doesn't make sense. It's not true. And it's actually pretty arbitrary when you think about it. Also, we're not technically in a new year yet. We say this thing, it's a new calendar year, but it's according to a calendar year that has been arbitrarily made up. But new years do not start in the middle of winter. Winter represents the closing of a year. The new year actually starts in spring. Right? Rationally, it's good to know that because your body knows that. When people say this whole new year, new me thing, well, your body doesn't really agree with that. This is the reason why the whole New Year's resolution thing, it doesn't really succeed in the way that people intended it to. And the reason why is because you don't go through a rebirth in the winter. It's not really how that works. Winter is more of a time to rest and reflect. And it's a way to slow down and turn inward and reassess yourself in a way, right? Go through discovery and assessment. Actualization is the third step in self-development, and that typically happens in the spring, in the new year, the actual new year, when everything comes alive. Winter, everything goes into a contraction, right? Everything slows down. Our holidays don't make sense. They're not rational. They may be logical in some sense. It depends on what the goal is, but it's not rational. Even the story of Christmas, where people think, Jesus Christ was born in Christmas. That's not the birth of Jesus Christ, at least not according to Scripture, right? And I don't want to turn this into a religious conversation, but Jesus Christ was not born in the winter. It also wasn't really his name either. That's besides the point. We get fed these stories that we get indoctrinated into, whether it be, it's 2025. It's a form of indoctrination. The new year starts in the middle of winter. This is a result of a form of indoctrination. This is not rational. And a lot of our society is not rational. Even our economic model is not rational. And what happens is when we buy in deeply into this systemic or this civil model that is not rational, it's not consistent, it affects our ability to behave rationally. One way that you know that you're behaving rationally is when you're operating in your own best interest in a way that is not pathological to the others around you. Right? So rationality implies something broader. And I was thinking about one of the things that brought me to think about this is because indoctrination, good indoctrination, sounds logical on the surface, but if you really dig down into it, you realize it's heavily pathological. When you think of New Year, New Me, on the 1st of January, I'm gonna do this. what are you going to do exactly? Are you going to start what? Losing weight? Or are you going to start building muscle? Are you going to start a new business? Are you going to go to school? What are you going to do January 1st? Because it's an awkward time to start with these things, isn't it? Because whatever you're starting January 1st implies that you've prepared very well for it beforehand. So if you're going to start something brand new January 1st or in the beginning of January, that implies that you have prepped diligently throughout December for that launch or for that new journey. That's what that implies. If you haven't done that, then the deck is stacked against you by default as a result of that. January 1st isn't really a time of action necessarily. It's a time of assessment. The action really starts when the earth comes alive, when the season changes and spring happens and everything starts to open up. Right? So the whole January 1st thing is a false start. And the way that I can relate this is the 3 steps of self-development, right? First step is discovery, second step is assessment, third step is actualization. People tend to skip the first 2 and go straight to number 3, which is actualization. But how are you going to actualize what you don't fully understand? Right? Actualization is to bring something into reality, right? If you want to lose weight, the question is, well, how much weight do you want to lose, and why do you want to lose that weight, and do you understand how losing that weight will fundamentally change your life, and can you see yourself reaching that goal? And then when you reach that goal, what is your next goal after that? Because your goal setting doesn't just stop there. So let's say if you have to lose a total of 150 pounds and you lose 75, okay, now what? Well, now I'm gonna go after the next 75. Okay, well, what does that look like? If 75 is a checkpoint, that implies that you went through discovery, assessment, and then actualization. You hit the 75 pounds, and then you go back through discovery, assessment, and actualization. So you got to go through the 3 steps again, right? Whatever goal you're pursuing, there's 2 main motivations for that goal. Number 1, you can see yourself reaching that goal, either in whole or in part. So either you can hit that goal on the net, or you can get on the head, or you can get really, really close to it. Number 2, you pursue the actualization of a particular thing, even if you can't see yourself reaching it, but you pursue it anyway because it's a reflection of who you are. The work is a reflection of who you are, which is very powerful, right? If you are struggling against chronic illness, even if you can't see yourself getting into peak health, it doesn't mean that you don't pursue it. You pursue peak health on principle, because pursuing it on principle is a reflection of who you are. Right? And there's a whole bunch of things baked into that. You pursue wellness, you pursue better as a demonstration of gratitude, as appreciation. Life was given to you in some way, shape, or form, and you lived it. And you did the best that you could with it. You were given this opportunity out of many, and you took it. And you did it to the best of your ability on principle. That's a very powerful thing. And that kind of makes you bulletproof, because you're not doing something, expecting something in return. You're doing it on principle. And that's a very grounded thing. And that makes you very impervious to indoctrination, because you're already grounded. And in order for you to be indoctrinated, you have to be uprooted. So being grounded is extremely important, right? But before you even start on the whole rebirth and new journey thing, you gotta get grounded first. You gotta dig into your heels. You gotta get your stance planted firm. And so now is the time to really reflect on that. It's always the perfect time to reflect on that. But now in particular, it's very important to not skip steps. In the same way where people go into a false start and they think that we just got hit with a snowstorm, several inches of snow, dropped down to like 15, 14 degrees, 17 degrees, freezing cold outside. And that's what you think a new year looks like? The human body is like, no, it's not. Going back to step one of discovery out of the 3 steps of self-development. Discovery serves as a check-in on yourself. Right? Because your goals and the things that you pursue is a reflection of who you are. It's very important to know who you are, right? Because that's what grounds you. It's important to know what motivates you to your core, because your motivation, that's the thing that moves you forward. What gets you up? What is the narrative in your head? Because we're driven by a story. We're all driven by some type of story that we tell ourselves in our head, and that motivates us. A very common story is, I'm going to wake up and go to work and do what I got to do because I got to earn a paycheck to pay my bills. It's a very common story. It's not a powerful story, but it's a very common story. Problem is that that story is not compelling. It's threatening. Right? It's not motivating in a positive sense. It's motivating in a negative sense. Meaning, you're doing something out of a fear of a consequence. You're not doing something out of a positive motivation. So like, let's say you go to work and you do your job on a consistent basis because that's what you need to do to earn a paycheck to pay your bills. That's one motivation. That's a negative motivation. You're doing something out of a fear of something negative happening to you if you don't do it. A positive motivation is, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm working on a particular thing that I am using as the primary mode of my self-actualization. I'm developing a skill set. I'm building a thing. It could be I'm building a home, I'm building a garden, I'm building a hypothecary, right? I'm growing herbs. I'm building a business that serves my environment. I'm doing a thing that's beneficial, not just to me, but it extends beyond me. I'm doing a thing that I'm passionate about. I was called to it. It's meaningful to me. It's deeply personal. And I sacrificed to do it, not because anybody made me do it, but because I was called to do it. This is a thing I really want to do, right? Now, you can have a negative motivation and a positive motivation. Like, I need to go to work and do what I got to do to pay my bills. And I can be negatively motivated by that. But I can also say, but after I'm done with work and I pay my bills, I'm going to work on this thing that I'm deeply passionate about. I can do both. So you can have a negative motivation and a positive motivation. And these are good things to figure out in your mind before the actual new year. A lot of the work that I do, it's internal. It's a lot of learning on the back end and try to figure out things. It's a lot of observational work. And it's a lot of people watching to figure out, not just what, because I see myself in everyone I talk to. Right? I see myself in like even wild animals running around. Some people call this like empathy or whatever the case is, right? I did a video, and it was like about the 10 lies about a keto or carnivore diet, right? And what's interesting is I did this video because it's an important thing to talk about. Because it's very interesting of like when people tell the stories that they tell in their head, and they're tethered to it in a very strong way, even if it doesn't really intuitively make any sense. And the question is why? What's the motivation? And so I prod people by doing these videos a little bit, right? So you get all the people. I had a guy jump in my comments and he's saying, well, I did a plant-based diet and I got sunburn on my left arm because I wasn't eating meat, right? Now, everybody knows that you don't get sunburn from food, you get sunburn from sun exposure. If you're compelled to claim publicly that you got sunburn from not eating meat, it's very interesting to figure out, well, what would compel a person to just make up stories like this, right? Or like the whole like we don't need carbs and we can survive on just meat. Sure, you can. Human beings are very resilient and can survive on very little. That is true. I don't have an interest in just simply preserving human life or just doing just enough to survive. I'm not interested in that. That means that you're living at the margins. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in what's the bare minimum you need to make it. What's beneficial? What can you do to reach your best? That's my whole thing. So if I'm going to deprive myself of something, I have a very good reason for doing it. And it's not just simply because I don't need it. Right? Now, if you believe that, hey, we exist in the billions and we should just have a meat-based diet, right? Okay, fair enough. I'm using this as an example because it's not what this is about. I'm just using this as an example. Because this goes back to the indoctrination thing. Is that you can be like a YouTuber selling electrolyte powders and whatnot on the internet and selling t-shirts for, $30, $45 or whatever the case is. And just, turn your YouTube into a thing that makes a lot of money and all this type of stuff, right? Have podcasts and it got this whole AstroTurf thing going on. And it's like, plants are trying to kill you. Fruits are just bowls of sugar and you should avoid them because they're going to give you diabetes, whatever. You get cyanide poisoning from veggie chips and flax seeds. People make all kind of weird claims, right? And you got to think, well, what's motivating that? What's up with that? What's with the fear mongering about like vegetables or like fruits and stuff? It's kind of weird, right? Well, who decided that it was a good idea to make a calendar where it's like, oh, this is just arbitrarily 2025? We all know that humanity's history goes back way longer than 2025 years ago. So why are we all collectively getting together and saying that it's 2025? This is what I'm talking about. So American culture, like meat eating is a big thing, right? And all of it is just like product of class development. So for example, when Americans were doing very well financially as a result of successfully creating this war machine and coming out on top of World War II and all this type of stuff, you had like the suburbs, you had a formation of a middle class, and the middle class was entirely a government creation. And then people had more money, and so you bought more meat and things like this, right? And grilling steaks in a yard and all of this. And it was a class thing to eat meat, right? But like poor people are not big meat eaters, right? It's a lot easier to grow fruits and vegetables on your land than it is to just rear a bunch of animals and just have a bunch of animals that you just grow on your property so that you can like stab them to death and then eat them, right? One is a lot more expensive than the other, and one is more so like there's the class divide. So it's not mathematically plausible for just humanity to just be meat-based. It's not plausible. You'll eat the planet to death. And then when there's no more meat to eat, you just either have to revert back to eating a plant-based diet or just starve to death. That's just how it works. Right? You can't just have a planet where you just use the surface of the planet to just have grass-fed cows so you could just wait for them to grow up off grass so that you could stab them to death or shoot them in the face and then eat them, right? And you're going to knock over the rainforest and all of that. You're just going to have a flat earth of just grass fields so that you can just continue to eat cheeseburgers, right? It's not, you can't just be, we're just going to be a nation of cheeseburger eaters. We're just going to be a planet of zombified cheeseburger eaters, right? Who we have a weird, irrational fear of just eating fruits and vegetables. It's ridiculous. But you have people who will believe in things like this very strongly, right? So I'm saying it doesn't matter what it is. You can make the same thing about the calendar. You can make the same argument about our calendar is weird. What we consider the first day of the year, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Our economic model, capitalism, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense because no naturally forming economy works like capitalism. None. Capitalism is a perverse economic model. It just is. It's not even really up for debate. Any economic model has to go around in a wheel. Okay? Resources have to circulate. That's the only way an ecosystem can be stable. If you have resources being funneled up into a particular spot and it's not recycling, you get this choke point of resources accumulating in a particular area, and that comes at the expense of everything else in the ecosystem, and that collapses the ecosystem. Imagine all the water gradually evaporating from the surface of the planet and going up into the sky, but it never rained. All of the water just collected in the sky over a period of time, and it just never rained because for whatever reason, the clouds were just hoarding water and being greedy with the water. So gradually, the surface of the planet dries out, all the crops die, everything dies of dehydration, and you just have all this water sitting in the sky. That's pathological, right? That's not natural. It doesn't work like that because clouds are not greedy, right? But human greed decides, hey, let's create this economic model called capitalism where we'll just be greedy and just hoard resources for ourselves. Now, if any living being in nature did that, all the scientists would study them and try to figure out what is wrong with these bizarre, greedy creatures. Why do they behave this way? It's pathological. But we as human beings, when we engage in that behavior, it's normal. It's just how our economy works. It's not rational. Right? And we know it's not rational. In the same way, we can't be a species of just burger eaters. Right? So we live in this weird age of social media where we're bombarded with tons of data and messages and information. And it's not distilled in this kind of rational way. It's exciting. And we like exciting things, right? We like all this going on here, right? That's why TikTok blew up. Because it's just, the moment you open the app, noise, colors, big movements, yelling, jokes, explosions, right? And you can just keep scrolling forever. And it's just constant stimulus in your face. Dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And then 2 hours later, you're like, oh my God, I've been on TikTok for 2 hours. Right? You get sucked in. I'm very well aware of this too. So if you hear the water running in the background music, my goal is not to give you a really stimulating experience. I don't want to do that to you. I don't want to do that to myself. But kind of settle down and have more of a calm conversation where we think a little bit deeper about things. It's not sexy. It's not all kind of soundboards, sound effects, and exciting, ridiculous conversations. It's not that. But this is something that's incredibly necessary to stop and slow down and be like, what the hell's going on? What are we doing? Is a concept of breaking resistance. This is the thing that I'm a huge fan of. This idea of breaking resistance. So you have sensitivity, and then you have resistance. And this is largely like a hormonal thing. It's very important to be aware of this and what it feels like when it happens. Sensitivity feels amazing because everything is so deep, rich, and impactful. You have a sensitivity to it. However, the more you engage with it, you develop resistance over time. This happens with everything. All right? Think about like hyper palatable food. Food is really sugary, it's really salty, it's got colors, it's crunchy, or it's just got like a really good texture, right? Like junk food. It's hyper palatable. You just keep eating and eating and eating it. It's just hijacking your brain, right? Like really sugary, syrupy, creamy Belgian waffles that are huge, right? And every morning you can have a Belgian waffle. And it's just cream and syrup and sugar and butter, and it's amazing, right? But if you eat that waffle for breakfast every day, maybe you start eating 2 every morning. And then every morning you keep having these waffles. They're so good. But then the more of them you eat, the more resistant you become to them. And then you get sick of them after a while. They lose the kick that they used to have. So you need like a stronger stimulus, or you just need to stop eating them altogether because you become sick of them. You become resistant. Right? That's the sensitivity resistance thing. The resistance is your body trying to get you to stop. So going to the rationality thing, a big part of rationality is consciously behaving in alignment with your body. Right? You can rationally keep eating and eating and eating, and your body doesn't want to eat anymore, but you want to keep eating. There's a conflict there. It's not rational. So you develop resistance over time. And then along with that resistance, you can get things like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. Right? Because there's other negative consequences that come with resistance. And when you break resistance, that's when things really go off the rails. Right? Breaking resistance essentially is you push past and you just keep engaging in the thing anyway. Even if you don't enjoy it, and even if your body's trying to get you to stop doing it, you just break past. And then after resistance comes pain. It's a hard crash, right? When you reach resistance, that's a signal to pull back. Or when you get real close to resistance, that's a sign to pull back. Another example would be caffeine, right? Caffeine is interesting because let's say you wake up in the morning, you drink coffee. Coffee is loaded with caffeine, suppresses your appetite, so you skip breakfast. Now, you skip breakfast, you tend to have less energy. You get used to skipping breakfast. You have less energy, you're tired, so you drink more coffee. Right? And you probably eat something sugary for energy because for whatever reason you feel like you got to eat something, right? So people on their way to work, they get like a croissant or a bagel, and it's like cream cheese, whatever people do, right? Just something quick, easy, you don't have to think too much about it. And sugar and coffee, right? And coffee tastes nasty on its own when it's just black. So you add like some cream or some sugar or something like to it to make it palatable. So you kind of like create this sugar craving a little bit because you're deprived of energy, because you're caffeinated, but you're not taking in real energy from food, right? It's not nourishing food. So basically, shortly after eating this pastry or this bagel or this croissant or whatever, you get a crash, you drink more coffee. You can get looped into that pattern of just hitting the caffeine. And the more you hit the caffeine, the more resistant you become to the caffeine. And the deeper you get into that resistance, the more tired and lethargic you feel. And your ability to engage rationally falls apart. And you'll notice it too, because if you've ever been stuck in this pattern where you're like this chronic coffee drinker, look at your decision making and then ranking it on a scale of 1 to 5. How good is my decision making when I'm drinking all these cups of coffee a day and I'm only eating once or twice a day? Right? A lot of people are drinking coffee back constantly, and they eat once, maybe twice a day. The one meal usually is either dinner, and if it's 2 meals, it's like something that they eat kind of for breakfast or brunch, and then dinner before they go to bed, right? Or it's a lunch break. Stop off at, like, I don't know, a Chick-fil-A or Panera Bread or whatever, wherever people go for lunch. So you skip breakfast, you have a lunch, and then a dinner. And then everything in between is like coffee or energy drinks or whatever the case is, right? And your job is busy and you got all these different tasks to do. And when you're busy with all these different tasks at work, you're not checking in with yourself. There's no check-ins going on with yourself. There's no self-observation, right? The lack of self-check-ins is deeply problematic because it's very dangerous to get stuck into behaviors that you're not aware that you're doing. What's my camera doing? I was gonna remember to fix these gesture control things. All right. I'm all getting sidetracked. See, like right now, I'm fooling around here. Fooling around. It's too much. All right. So, when you check in on yourself more frequently, you get to catch yourself and your behaviors. It's good to kind of take a log of your behaviors. All right. There's also a way that once you lock in the good behaviors that you want, you schedule around them. So like you have a schedule to one degree or another of what kind of behaviors you're going to engage in. Right? So like for me, I have like a set. I do this, then this, then this, then this. And that's the thing that I do every day. So I have that set in my mind that I do that. And then I have some built-in flexibility around those things. I do those things, but I have room for variation in between those tasks, right? I have this meal, I drink this tea, I do this workout, and then, I work on this thing, or whatever the case is, right? I do a specific type of work at this time. I do a specific type of work at this time. I have these calls at this time, and then I live stream at this time. Right? So I have these habits, and I basically structure my life around that. And then there's flexibility that I have for like check-in, self-talk, things like this, right? It's been one of the best things that I've ever done, right? So you develop like these habits, but like very intentional habits, rather than just like living your day kind of winging it. Because when you do that, you forget, oh, I didn't do this, or oh, I didn't do that, I forgot. So you want to schedule these things in, really important tasks to change your life. It's also a good idea to manage your relationships with other people and then manage your relationship with yourself. So for example, you do a lot of things for other people. Okay. Well, when you're doing all of these different tasks for other people, are you also doing a lot of different tasks for yourself? What are you doing for yourself? Because you have a relationship with yourself. So it's good to kind of rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How good of a relationship do you have with yourself, and what can you do to improve your relationship with yourself? Right? One of the most important things that you can do to improve the relationship that you have with yourself is manage your sensitivity and resistance better. If eating feels like a burden to you, oh, I can't eat all of this food. Eating is just a meal prep. It's just overwhelming. Well, what if you ate really, really good every other day? So rather than eating 1 or 2 meals every day, what if you had 3 or 4 meals Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and then you had 1 meal Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday? So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you did meal prep and you prepped everything you needed for the following day. Then meal prep is not overwhelming because you do your meal prep during fasts. Right? It's like reloading. You know? If we want to use a gun as an example, you load the rounds into the magazine. You insert the magazine into the gun. You rack it. You're ready to fire. Right? If you're going to be manually loading shells into your magazines, your thumb's going to be getting a lot of work pushing all them rounds into the magazine. If you've ever loaded multiple magazines in a day, you know what that feels like, right? You're just pushing the rounds into the magazine. So you can alternate. So you don't necessarily have to do the meal prep and the eating on the same days every day. You can do it every other day. Right? So this is like a load balancing thing. When you go through a fast, food is a lot more enjoyable the following day. You're more ready or excited to eat. This is one way to manage sensitivity and resistance. So you have hunger hormones, ghrelin, leptin, right? Leptin makes you feel full, satiated, you don't really have much of an appetite. Ghrelin, you're hungry. Ghrelin is like a sensitivity to food. You're ready to eat. Big time. Leptin, you're kind of resistant to food. I don't really want to eat. It's too much, I'm not hungry. All right, and if you gotta force feed yourself, doesn't feel good. Heavy meals sit on you, you're like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get this food in. It feels like a chore. So that's why I'm a very big fan of like the alternate day fasting. It's a great way to balance and maintain a healthy balance of sensitivity and resistance. You develop your sensitivity to food in your fasting days, and it keeps you stable, right? Let me stop here and bring this up. How has this raw vegan lifestyle improved your mental health? I'm currently in a state of severe anxiety, recovery, and coming out of a hard time in my life. So I'm gonna get into that, right? Because I work with a lot of people, coaching people. And it's this weird split. I've had people and they're like, man, I'm feeling good. Things are going really well so far. People are hitting their goals, crushing it, right? So I had some good calls today where folks is like, man, I'm excited. I've been just green lights all the way. Feeling good so far with our success. And then some people, they've taken massive hits, deaths in the family, things like this, rough stuff, right? For those of us who have taken hits, we're not doing well. To facilitate recovery, you have to be really good at managing resistance and sensitivity. When you take a massive hit in your life, you go through a trauma in your life, you become resistant to everything. Right? Traumas, they stop you in your tracks. And if you just try to push past a trauma, if you try to break resistance, it's going to blow up on you later. So going through a grieving process is really, really important. This requires honesty and engaging with that. It doesn't look pretty. It looks different for everyone. It doesn't look pretty, but it has to be done. And you want to do it in a fairly controlled environment. And if you're going to do it around people, you do it around people who you trust. But you have to deal with it. You can't just bury it because it'll blow up on you later, and it'll blow up on you when you least expect it. And traumas most frequently blow up on you when you least expect it, when you've already hit resistance. And if you try to break resistance, that trauma comes back out of nowhere and blows up on you. It can derail like half your year. You can lose 3 to 6 months. Right? A raw vegan diet can help. It can help. It depends on how you do it. A raw vegan diet is really good for improving your sensitivity to food, depending on what you've been eating. During traumas and states of anxiety, a lot of the times you lose your appetite. You just can't really eat. Right? You lose your appetite. So with a raw vegan diet, raw foods typically are easy to get down. It's not real heavy food, right? Raw foods are not heavy foods. They're water-rich, hydrating, electrolyte-rich foods. So it's a really good source of easily absorbable energy. Right? Raw foods like fruits and things are high frequency foods. Feel good to eat. It's also a good idea to manage what your cravings are. So if you're in a deep state of anxiety, you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, you have massive salt cravings and crunchy food cravings a lot of the time. So you may want to do more leafy greens, dry roasted and salted nuts and seeds with a variety of different types of seasonings or things like that in a salad. Like one of my big ones is like, a variety of sunflower seed kernels, cashews, peanuts, salted, nutritional yeast, diced onion, bell pepper, really crunchy leafy green vegetables, some avocado slices or something like that. And then season it with spicy mustard and agave. And really made this like one of my go-tos there. And ideally, I like to eat something like that fairly close to bedtime. In the middle of the day it's a good idea to have like really water-rich foods. And you can graze. But you listen to your body. Right? You wake up first thing in the morning, you can just have several bananas. Right? So you can have like, let's say anywhere from 16 to 32 ounces of bananas. And the bananas are really good for your emotional and mental health, right? Loaded with magnesium, zinc, tryptophan, variety of different antioxidants, loaded with B vitamins, all that type of stuff, right? They're not necessarily super, super sweet. Depends on how ripe they are. But they're not like really tangy and sweet and sticky. They're not like that, right? So bananas are like that really good morning food where you could just eat just a ton of bananas, right? And then have like an ounce of dry roasted almonds or Brazil nuts or something like that, right? So you get really good sources of like, protein, selenium, zinc, magnesium, potassium, this type of thing. And it's filling and it calms you down. You let that leptin kick in. And then of course you can follow that up with deep breathing exercises, maybe journaling or self-talk, things like this, or just have moments of silence. You need to spend time with yourself or time with yourself and loved ones and engage in more introspection, gratitude, and things like that. Right? But give yourself time. And be raw and honest with yourself, but not in a self-destructive way. Right. Losses, one of the best things that you could do when suffering a loss is you put all of your energy into recovering from the loss. Okay, now what? I made a mistake, or I thought I did everything I was supposed to, and this blew up on me. I took a massive L. I feel lost. How do I get my bearings? What is the way forward? And then focus on what is the way forward. And just because you ask yourself what is the way forward does not mean, oh, let me just hurry up and take action. No. Take your time. You have your good support centers, if you have any, people that you know, and you lean on them when you need to. But these are people who should know to give you space when you need it. You need space, you need time, and you need an environment that facilitates the development of clarity. Clarity implies rational thought, and stress eats into your ability to behave rationally. So engaging in action, big action, while under a tremendous amount of stress is not ideal to do unless you absolutely need to. If you don't need to move, if you don't need to engage in action, don't. Because high pressure and stressful situations will cause you to be reactive. You make even more mistakes and things can blow up on you even further. All right? So be slow to act and be more introspective and take time with yourself. Your diet facilitates recovery, emotional and mental wellness, as a raw diet or a high raw diet did for me. I'm a little bit more flexible. I'm not dogmatically fully raw. I'm not. I don't see a reason in being so. But ideally, a raw diet is ideal for me. In the season of winter right now, not so much, unfortunately, right? The fruits don't really hit the same in a cold climate where these things are normally out of season. So you gotta improvise. Curry lentils or curry chickpeas is basically like a number one on my list right now. Overnight oats, apples, pineapples, right? These types of things. Whatever you can get, you get. But warm and savory foods right now has been a real thing for me that just resonates with me. If you feel that, you feel you need more warm and savory, listen to your body. You don't have to be dogmatically raw. There's a time and place. Raw is really, really good for spring, really, really good for summer. But when the land dries up, when the land goes to sleep and no longer bears the fruit that the open seasons do, hey, look, you got to bend the knee. You got to capitulate to your environment, right? You said, did you say curry chickpeas? I sure did. I said curry chickpeas. Yeah. That's right. I've been dumping that curry powder up in there. Low heat. And puree the chickpeas, the lentils in a blender to make a sauce. I pour it on top of like some kasha or some basmati rice or some quinoa. That's right. I'm not used to all the starch, so it feels heavy on me. Feels heavy on me. I'm not used to like all the starch. But I had to capitulate because I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get like this real big bag of rice, and go old school with it. That's what I did. So, going back to managing resistance and sensitivity, this goes to, for example, blood sugar, insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, right? Even depression, anxiety, these things hinge on dopamine resistance, dopamine sensitivity. So for example, one thing you got to be careful with platforms like TikTok or Instagram is every scroll, every slide, You get that dopamine hit, so you're hitting your dopamine button hard. Like button, share, comment. Pop, 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 pop. Right? And then when it's real late at night, when you're supposed to be sleeping, but you're scrolling and your eyes are all dilated, bright lights in your face. Right? Your brain is like a baby at an adult party. Have no idea what's going on. It's just hijack your brain chemistry. You're just sitting there like this, overwhelmed with stimulus. You're just in it. It's like a soup of excitement. And that really weighs on your brain chemistry. It can kill your motivation real big time. And if sustained long enough, you lose your ability to engage rationally, because entertainment is also a stressor. Because there's only been so much entertainment you can engage in at one time. Entertainment requires a lot of energy, right? To engage in energy, just entertainment, a lot of entertainment. It's a high energy thing. It's a lot. And when it's entertainment that's really easy to come by and it's really exciting, you know, like TV shows, movies, flashing colors, lights, special effects, all this type of stuff, it can be overwhelming, and it has really negative implications for your brain chemistry. We need to settle down. We need peace. We need to pull back a little bit, because when you develop resistance to these things, your attention span gets slaughtered. People have like a really short attention span now, to the point they can't read, right? Like people can't read a study, or like people can't read a book, or people can't sit and meditate because they don't have the attention span for it. If you struggle having an attention span, that resembles an inability to engage rationally, because you can't slow down and pay attention, right? It regresses you into like a child, right? And then this facilitates like this kind of zombified idiocracy that we live in today, right? So it's good to have some kind of mechanism, because we have like an inner child. We are one singular individual from the outside looking in, but inside we're really like multiple people. We are our inner child, which resembles our past. We are our highest self, and then we are also our lowest self, our personal id, like the worst of us. And then there's the spectator in between, the mediator, which is who we know ourselves to be presently as a singular entity. So you're like 4 entities really rolled into one. So we're like very complex in that way. So we have to manage like this internal political system that we have with ourselves. And that internal political system requires us to have a really strong relationship with our inner child. So we have to like be like a parent or a guardian to our inner child. And our inner child is dealing with the world through our eyes. Our inner child is with us at all times. And our inner child is experiencing all the things that we're experiencing as adults. And this kind of makes life a little weird, a little difficult. And if you don't acknowledge your child, you don't nurture your inner child, there's a resentment there that can really blow up on you. And you can get robbed of your joy, and that trauma of your inner child not being nurtured can really blow up on you. And then you can have like these weird feelings of like abandonment or insecurity, or weird pressures, imposter syndrome, all types of stuff. And if you don't have a strong relationship with your inner child, that makes room for other negative entities to then weaponize your inner child against you. Like your lowest form of yourself, your personal id, can conspire with your inner child and manipulate your inner child to turn on you. Right? And those resentments often come out like they come out as conflicts that you had with your parents growing up. And what happens is a lot of the times the feuds or issues that you had with your parents growing up, it's really a manifestation of your current relationship that you have with your inner child. You take on the behaviors to one degree or another of your parents. You can be overprotective, right? You don't let them do nothing. You're always kind of afraid they're going to get hurt, so you overly shelter them and you ignore them. Things like that, right? It varies from person to person, but it's this kind of stuff. Your highest self is like a thing that's a really good thing to reach for. And it's a thing to think about what your highest self looks like, the best version of you. It's good to strive for that, because if you strive for that, it's very compelling, it's very motivating, and it's a thing that brings you peace more often than not. It limits your regrets. It helps you to live a more fulfilled, robust life. Right? You can be incredibly successful in your life by aligning with your id, your worst self, or your best self, your highest self. Very interesting. So like you see like the billionaires of the world, right? These nefarious creatures, captains of industry. A lot of them has capitulated to their own personal id. A lot of times they're jaded by the world around them, so they become kind of predatory or selfish, just this dog eat dog kind of thing. Disingenuous, scheming, plotting, right? We see this a lot in our politicians. To be a politician, like a successful politician in this shark tank, right? Of a system, of a political system. The most successful politicians end up being like the most smarmy, disingenuous creatures. And they're very successful a lot of the times. Until they get caught in some type of scandal that blows up on them, right? And a lot of the time, these people capitulate to their id because they believe that's just how the world is. And you have to do that in order to get ahead, right? Your highest self, yeah, you're not really likely to be a billionaire if you're striving to be your highest self. Because when you are your highest self, any wealth you accumulate, you're compelled to give it away. Hoarding is not an attribute of a person who is leaning into their highest self. You can be successful and wealthy to a degree, but not pathologically so. The wealth that you have is just because you're just simply not giving it away fast enough. Right? It's like that kind of thing. Your wealth slowly and gradually accumulates, but you give away a lot. Right? I don't mean like this, I want to give away so I can kind of, because it looks good for my image kind of thing. It's like you do it because you feel compelled to do it. Even if it doesn't necessarily work in your best interest, you still do it, right? And so that's like a manifestation of it. And when you have a better relationship with yourself, you can see in other people their relationship with their inner child, their relationship with their highest self, and their relationship with their id, their worst self. You can see it because you see yourself in them. You can see their decisions. You can relate to them. And you say, that could have been me if I would have chose a different path. If there's anything that you're going to take away from tonight, as far as breaking resistance, you're guaranteed to not break resistance if you know how to stop and switch from a state of doing to a state of being. There will be moments in your life very frequently where you're not trying to do anything. Stop. Sometimes you have to stop. Every fiber of your being is like, stop. Hold on. Wait. Because you just want to, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to profits, and I got to do this, and I got to get more likes and clicks and views, and I want to get this up and this higher, I got to do this cardio, and I got to do these steps, and I got to lose these pounds, and you're just, and you're just doing, and your body's like, stop. And when you don't listen to your body, you just bleed out all your motivation. Right? So chances are everybody watching me right now has experienced what it's like to not want to do anything. You just have no motivation. People normally refer to this as laziness. Well, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're not working hard. Lazy. There's no such thing as laziness. It's not a real thing. It's not how that works. Just because you're not doing anything doesn't mean you're lazy. There's a reason why you've stopped. You've hit resistance, and when you hit resistance, you don't want to do anything. You want to stop. If you keep going even though you want to stop, you do it for long enough, you break resistance, and then you get an injury. Right? You fracture a bone, or you roll the crap out of an ankle, you end up, or you break a hand or something like this. Right? You get hurt, you mess up your back or whatever. A lot of times people get injuries. Like, that's like a great example of, like, in fitness. People push too hard, they get injuries. Like, you have these CrossFitters and they're wearing Kines tape and all this type of stuff. They got all kind of braces and things. They look all biomechanical and whatnot because they're all wrapped and taped up with just all this duct tape and stuff holding them together. Because they're just doing all types of just crazy. Training twice a day, working out every day of the week. They're swimming, running, biking, lifting all kind of weights, doing all kind of training volume, 2-hour workouts every day. Look, you run yourself hard. And you'll have like really successful top tier athletes and their body is screaming. Their joints are on fire all the time. And they're just pushing because they have to. They're sponsored athletes. They want to win this competition. And they have all of these people behind them that they feel like they can't fail them. So they have to keep putting in the work. They don't want to do it, but they can't quit because there's too many people who bet on them. So they got to keep going. You can't stop because of the shame that you feel like everybody will look at you at. What do you mean you're not coming to train today? What do you mean you're going to drop out? What do you mean you don't feel like doing it? No, we agreed you were going to go all the way. What do you mean you don't feel well? Look at, like, what's that athlete? She's like half Haitian, half Japanese tennis player. What's her name? Her name's like Naomi or something like that. And like, there's like a competition or whatever. She took a break from tennis for like mental health reasons. And the people were dragging her in the media. All these kids these days and their self-care and they're soft and people talking crap. Right? You'll have like top tier athletes. And if that athlete wants to take a break or whatever, people got all kind of smoke for them. Right? It's that kind of external pressure that keeps people in. It's the same thing at your job. What you mean you can't come into work today? What you mean you need a mental health day? What? What do you mean? What do you mean no? What do you mean you can't do that? What do you mean you can't give me what I want? What do you mean? You gotta stop. So it's not motivation that's keeping them going. It's like a fear of being like shamed and ridiculed and all this type of stuff. Or a fear of failure. Right? Laziness is not a real thing. It's your brain and your body giving you cues. Say, slow down. Hold on. Let's stop doing all this stuff you're doing for a little bit. Slow down. You're going to build the muscle. You're going to get stronger. You're going to get the results. But to give you, wait. Just hold on a little bit. Slow down. What's the rush? Right? You're trying to get through life as quickly as possible. Take your time. Right? Sometimes you got to take your time. So when I'm like, oh yeah, sometimes, you just need to train 2 to 3 times a week. But I want to build muscle as fast as possible. And I want to lose the weight as fast as possible. That's cool. But the question is, are you willing to do and take the hits that are necessary to take to do that? Because it's going to come at a cost. If you want these things, just understand there's a price tag associated with that. Right? You got athletes, like professional powerlifters. And there's been world-class professional athletes do a back squat going for a world record and tear the quadricep right off the bone in the middle of the lip, in the middle of the lift. during competition and they collapse to the ground. The leg is cooked. They got to go to surgery. They got to get a surgery, reattach the muscle back to the bone and all of this type of stuff, go through all this rehab and everything. Worst moment in life. It was like, man, I was #1 in the world. Snap, gone. And then they're like, you know what, this weightlifting and all this heavy stuff, my joints are screaming. I just had a surgery. I'm overweight. I can't breathe. I got sleep apnea at night. I need to get healthy. It's that. Right? You see, like, people will make fun of LeBron James's feet, how his feet look. Well, look, he pays that's the price of admission to be like #1, right? At the top of your game. We look up to it and we're like, man, I want to be like that. Well, let him take his shoes off and look at his feet. Do you want those injuries? Do you want the hits, right? Pro wrestlers, Brazilian jiu-jitsu professionals, #1 most revered wrestlers, cauliflower ears. They can't even put earphones in their ears because their ears are just swole up. The cartilage is just crazy. Their ears look like mushrooms. It's the price you pay. It's not free. You get all the attention and the accolades and whatnot of other people, but it comes at your expense. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or that you shouldn't achieve that, but just understand the cost that's associated with it. And most people who pursue it won't make it. Because you have to have everything aligned for you to be able to. It is very unlikely that you can break resistance and things not just fall apart on you. It's a very risky path. The reward can be incredible, but the risk is extremely high. Right? So that's a thing to consider. But if you take your time and you're more patient with the process, you can be 65 years old, 70 years old, and look like you're 40. No injuries, no muscles ripped off the bones, no joints hurting, all this type of stuff. No, none of that. Health, peace of mind, just complete tranquility. And you go, wow, you're 70 years old, you look like you're 40. But I mean, man, you in shape, abs, everything, all of that. What's your routine? Yeah, I train for about 20, 30 minutes a day, 3, maybe 4 times a week. I eat a high raw vegan diet. I meditate, I foam roll, stretch, I do daily mobility. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning, manage my stress. I juice in the mornings. It's nothing crazy. It's not a crazy routine. It's not like a really sexy, exciting routine. Right? It's actually very sustainable to the point where like anybody could do it. You just have the patience to be able to do it. Right? It's like the hare and the tortoise. You know, slow and steady wins the race. It's really what it is. Look, you know, you can take the route of longevity or you can burn out real quick. But be real explosive while you're doing it. I'm not saying one is better than the other or one is wrong and the other is right. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just know the costs associated when pushing up against resistance or breaking resistance. I love Kobe, but the truth is his work ethic was so insane and caused him career injuries towards the end. Yeah. Yeah, that work ethic, I mean, it's a gift and a curse, but you know, that's why I say, know the cost associated. Are Homo sapiens an herbivorous species? Homo sapiens are biologically herbivorous, but behaviorally omnivorous. Human beings are largely adaptive, right? Even obligate herbivores will eat meat in certain circumstances. It depends on the acuteness of the situation. Right? Folks, definitely like the stream if you like the stream. I'm going to be going back to my weekly schedule, but instead of doing 6 p.m., I'm doing 7 p.m., right? Because that seems to be a better time. 6 p.m. is a little too early for a lot of people, or at least a lot of my tribe members. They're like, man, I'm still at work at 6 p.m. Sound like I don't want to go back to 8 p.m., but I'll do 7. Right? I'll be talking more about my journey as well and what I'm doing and what I'm doing differently going into the new year that we're currently not in yet. But sharing more of like, you know, what I'm doing personally and how I approach certain things, talking more about my own personal psychology, why I do the things that I do, what my methodology is, how to get more in alignment with yourself, right? So talking about more mindset stuff. Personal psychology and mindset is a thing that I'm really, really, really interested in. It's one of my passions, actually. Like, I'm passionate about nutrition, right? But probably not as much as like the psychology and the inner workings as far as self-development. I'm a bit more interested in personal psychology. And that leads into things like conversations of spirituality, which is a really phenomenal conversation. Spirituality is very interesting to me. The way that people talk about spirituality, it can sound a little ridiculous. I try to avoid doing that. But spirituality is a thing that it's rooted in like a tangible science, even to like a mathematical degree. When people talk about frequency and vibration and whatnot, these are not really like gimmicky words, but these are things that are like objectively measurable in science. Right? These are mathematically tethered things. It's not like, oh, it's just how you feel and you can't measure it. Well, you actually can. And in fact, the thoughts that you have influence your physiology. Your thoughts that you have can be the make or break thing, right? And to be able to have command over your thoughts, it's hard to do to varying degrees. You can have command over your thoughts sometimes, even majority of the time, but like all the time is very difficult. There's an incredible amount of discipline, and it's hard to do in our society because of all the noise that we're always surrounded. So one of the things that I want to do is really kind of slow down and have more conversations like this, right? Where we talk about these kinds of things, because it's very difficult to stick to a training plan and a diet plan and all of this type of stuff and be able to heal and recover without that discourse, without that dialogue. A great example of this is Miss D. Big shout out to D After 50. I've learned a tremendous amount from her. She don't know how much I've learned from her. If you want to know how important mindset is, it's diet is important, but your mindset and your thoughts. And I don't mean like mindset as to like, I don't mean like in the personal development guru sense. I mean in a very real sense where, yeah, your thoughts change you physiologically. I'm not talking about the type of personal development that serves as a stand-in for systemic critique. It's not what I'm talking about. And just to further elaborate on that, you'll have motivational speakers. And whenever they talk about success in life, whether it be making money or having a successful business and all this type of stuff, there is no systemic critique. Everything is personal responsibility, as if we live in a vacuum and there's not a governing system that has built-in pathologies that hinder us. So if you notice, I have a systemic critique as well as personal solutions that stem from accountability. You have to offer both. So you have to acknowledge the environment you're in. Like the environment that tells you that the year is 2025, even though it's not, right? The pathologies. And look, I love TikTok. But like, I gotta be mindful when I open up TikTok, I'm gonna be bum rushed with all kind of stuff, comedy, sketches, and skits, and all. And I'm like, look, I want to upload this video and check my inbox and respond to messages. And then I'm getting off. Instagram, same things. I'll keep scrolling and then I'll be burning time. Right. So I got to be mindful of that. YouTube is a bit harder to do because you have to click on a thing and then choose to watch it. TikTok, you don't choose to watch any of the videos. It just comes up. You either skip it or you don't. Right. One of my upcoming, and I'm gonna talk more about this too, but this is a great example. I have internal contradictions. I'm not perfect either. I want to broaden my message. I don't know if broaden my message is the right word. I don't want to broaden my message necessarily. I want to reach more people, but at the same time, I'm not a person that likes a lot of attention. I don't like a lot of attention. I don't really like attention much at all. Right? I like a minimal amount of attention. So I don't take pictures of myself and post them. Whenever I post anything, it's usually to give you valuable information that would help you. It's not really about me. I don't want a whole lot of attention on me. Right? But these things can be in conflict with each other because if you don't like attention, then you're not going to be so willing to get in front of a camera. So you produce less content, you speak to people less, you live stream less, and all this type of stuff. I'm a fairly introverted person. I don't really like a whole lot of people in my face or constantly talking to people all the time. I don't. Right? However, I have an objective. I have people reach out to me in emails, messages in my inbox, whatever the case is, and they'll tell me about how I changed their life. I've never even spoken to them before. Or I had people book a call with me and they'd be like, yeah, I've been following you for like several years now. And I've been applying the things that you've been talking about and it changed my life. And that's like really motivating to me because sometimes I feel like I'm talking into the void. Right? I don't like doing content where like I'm talking to a camera and I just upload it. And it's like, well, let's see if people watch it. I like the live streaming thing. I'd much rather do that than do the whole content thing. It's just weird to me to like record a thing and then. So what I try to do with my content, if you notice, is I'll put in clips and I try to make it like an artistic expression because I'm a very artistic person. Art was actually like my first passion as a kid. So I like to weave the art into the content creation. That's like an artistic thing for me. Right? However, to produce art requires a lot of energy. You have to put a lot of yourself into your art. Right? And you see this in art today where, like for example, music, all the songs are like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. They're like real short. And it's just constantly being churned out. So the quality of the music in the art goes down because it's being overproduced. Because you have this short attention span and it's this congestion of all this content and everybody's vying for likes and clicks and shares and all of this. And it's this attention economy in an audience with a short attention span. It's a mess. And you have people struggling with their bills and they have to get clicks and views and likes. And it's just rat race, right? It's weird. So people just churning out and overproducing and over-consuming. It's just extra, constantly. Super pathological and weird. And I see that, I'm like, I pull back a little bit. So yeah, I have my framing of that and how I view these things. It needs some work and refinement and come to more agreement, right? And there are certain forms of therapy that I have to engage in my life, more cold weather exposure. I don't really like the cold. So I'll go out in the cold like I did today and walk around in the snow and whatnot. And I hate it when I get out there. And I kind of get comfortable in it if I'm out there, if I allow myself to be out there for longer. I don't like doing it, but I do it because it is a therapy. But the thing is that it's not in the beginning. It's like an ice bath. You gotta sit in it long enough to actually develop some type of comfort. I like sun. I like warmth. I don't like wearing all kind of clothes. I don't like it. I don't. So that's an internal conflict too, right? So the point is that we all have to work through these things and refine our minds and get more into alignment with our bodies. Waking up in the morning and the first thing you do is get into your body rather than stay in your head. Right? And I do this. I'm guilty of this. I wake up in the morning, I roll over, I check my phone, and I read messages and emails and whatnot before I even get up. I had to stop doing that. I actually have to get up and stand up immediately and get into my body. Daily mobility and all of that type of stuff and get moving before I engage with anything. I meet myself halfway because I'll check my messages and I'll see them, but I don't start responding to them immediately because then I'll be all morning going back and forth with people. I don't want to do that. And I'll blow my morning going back and forth. So I get into my body in the morning, but just not quick enough. I can refine that a bit. Just being real with y'all, right? So in conclusion, check in with yourself and be aware of how close to resistance you are and pull back a little bit. You don't need to pull back hard, just a little bit. Just step back a little bit. Take a step back. Zoom out. Slow down. That's why the check-ins are so important. Do we have time for a call-in? Put a 1 in the chat if y'all want to do call-in. If y'all want to get up here, ask me questions or anything like that. Or just to speak your piece. If you got something to say, put a 1 in the chat if you want to step on stage. And if not, I'm going to call it a night. All right, so we got a 1 in the chat. And. Hold on a second. All right, there's the link. All right, so I just put the link in there. Woo, 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 woo. But if nobody has any words of departure to say, we're all good. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. And let me pin it. All right, so I just pinned it to the chat. All right, y'all. Well, if everybody doesn't really have anything to say, we're all good to go. I'm gonna sign off here tonight. I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in. Oh, hold on. All right, let's see. My man, you got to unmute that mic. unmute that mic, turn that camera on. If you're gonna come up. But it looks like we're having a difficult time getting that camera and that mic on. Also, if you want to come up but you don't want to be on camera, let me know, because I don't have to put you on camera either. But I'll save the call in for next week. And that be that. So folks, yeah, my man Vidya, you know, really having some technical difficulties there, it seems. So I'm gonna call it a night, folks. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and hanging out with me here. And that's it. I'm signing out. Oh, hold on. Look at that. He's just in the nick of time here. All right. What's going on, brother? Vidya, you up? But your mic is muted. You gotta unmute your mic. Uh-oh. We got some lagging going on. Would you be open to growing your own food and owning your own land? Absolutely. I think that we should do it as a community, right? You know, I got my land, you got your land. We exist in a community. We grow different things. We share with one another. And that whole thing. Vidya, what's going on, brother? How you doing? All right. So you unmuted the mic. I can hear you. Well, I can hear some background noise there.
Remove waste from our So if you drink tea,
but yeah.
toxins,
in any case,
the first thing you are putting into your
I'm gonna
body,
sign off tonight. Yeah, we got all of that noise going on
and
there.
this helps to clean out the waste, and also
That's right, community growth.
it's packed with many nutrients.
All right then, folks. We're gonna go ahead and call it a night. I know I said that several times already so far. But yeah, I'm gonna hang it up. And I catch you on the next Monday Night Live. And then for those of you who are tribe members, I'll see you Thursday.